Hello, everyone. We are back in the Butterfly Effect. This is episode number 3, and we are here with Nils. Nils Batti. How are you, Nils?
Hello, Juan. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm currently in Spain, and I was looking very, very forward to talking with you. So, hi, Juan, and hi to everyone that's viewing at the moment.
Hola, hola. He oído que estás mejorando mucho tu español.
Sí, vale, pero mi español es tan nuevo, tan bonito como tú ahora, entonces necesitamos hablar en inglés, creo que.
Perfecto, pues no pasa nada. Hablamos en inglés, pero muy bien, muy bien. Estoy muy contento del progreso. Actually, I can really notice the improvement, so congratulations for that.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, we will be talking about many things, but especially about the solar energy that was the thing that linked us. When I was developing EcoDriveX at Sweden, in Sweden, I connected with Niels through Science Park. So we started to talk about the solar industry, how to make this solar energy phenomenon like a democratic and fair movement that help the most of the people. And we are having this conversation again, and we wanted to share it with more people. So hopefully we can interact with more people joining. Otherwise, you will be able to see this later on because it will be recorded. So I always ask to the guest, Niels, to introduce themselves a little bit so the audience can know who they are.
Well, okay, let's make this very, very concise. I'm Niels. I was born in Germany and studied in Sweden and in Stockholm, to be more precise, and in Germany at RWTH Aachen. And I've always had like two main fields of interest in my life. This one field is basically everything about energy, the energy transition, electric vehicle, and especially transition to renewable energy. But the other side was always social justice. And I've always wanted to combine these two fields, which is basically creating a social justice transition to renewable energy. Because if we talk about solar installation, if we talk about electric vehicles, we are always talking about huge investment sums. And this is only something for financially well-off households. And in particular, you need to own your own roof. And this is kind of what connected us, I think, Juan, that we both strive for making the energy transition a more democratic thing, like you
Yeah,
introduced the
we
topic.
were doing exactly that, or I meant to do that with EcoDriveX because we have seen like a big potential. Since I was a student, since I was a student in the first years of the university, my bachelor, I saw like this unfair kind of system that we have in Spain. We have a lot of sun, we have a lot of potential to put solar panels and do installations, but there are not solar panels in family or shared buildings, right? And that was something that was mind blowing for me because almost everyone in Spain live in big buildings, two-thirds of the population, more or less. So then we tried to figure out how to make this possible. You were doing also something similar because you were working for a solar company, right, at Ion, but you were part of a Spanish project at Adeje, right?
So exactly, I think we need to give a bit more background about the topic that we deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is basically that the vast majority of our society lives in cities, in flats, and apartments, and they basically do not own the roof, or they own the roof collectively. And we've always thought how we could use so collective schemes in order to introduce solar energy. And 2 years ago, I worked on the Canary Islands on a project which was about energy communities. And energy communities or energy sharing basically allows people and neighbors to connect themselves and jointly use solar or renewable energy. And I found this concept that interesting that I wrote my bachelor thesis about this concept as well, in particular about Spain. And then I always had the thought in my mind that I want to explore this concept further, because we in Germany lack functional communities, and Spain is really a front runner in this sense, because they allow a very easy, unbureaucratic, at least in the law system, to allow neighbors in a circle of 2 kilometers to share energy amongst each other. And this is my background as well. So I worked in this field. I wrote my bachelor thesis, so very academic as well. And now I did a 2 months research project in Barcelona to explore this concept further.
Nice, super interesting. And I would like to dig a little bit deeper in your day-to-day routine, because you were innovation manager intern, right, in this project, if I'm right?
Exactly. I think the title, or what's hidden behind the title, is basically business development and stakeholder management. So kind of trying to get the overview of the project, because we have very, very skilled and motivated teams, but the marketing team, for instance, was lacking the technical expertise, and the technical department was lacking the social component, so to say, or the business component. And as I hold a business administration and electric engineering degree, I try to link these departments and compartments together and try to create the synergy between those departments.
Yeah, I like the word that you're using, connection, synergy. It's all about communication, good connection, right? And that's a good role. But can you, for example, describe a day working there, because it sounds super interesting? Innovation manager, right? In a solar project, in
Well,
one of the first ones.
excellent. So I don't think there exists something like a typical day, but let's try to summarize what my task would look like. So, for instance, one task would be like purchase a domain or deal with all the topics that come along with a domain purchase, and then after purchasing this domain, I headed to a call where we discussed the financial model, and then directly afterwards had a short um, meeting with the marketing guys, because they were asking about some technical components. What are we using? How can we communicate this properly? Or they wanted some figures. So a typical day does not exist, but this is all about innovation. I think innovation is always very rapid changes and a very dynamic environment as well. So yeah,
Absolutely.
you're always challenged. So a typical day was challenging, so to say, and unexpected as well.
That's cool, and yeah, as you say, that's part of entrepreneurship. But I think you have like a really interesting profile, because normally when you are an entrepreneur, normally, sometimes, let's say it like that, you are not really academic, or the typical example of the famous entrepreneur Steve Jobs that didn't finish the university and so on. But before this meeting, I was checking a little bit more in depth your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that you have like recognitions as a student. You have like a strong academic background, also because you studied the solar industry in your master thesis. So I would like to tell you to tell me like some thoughts about this, and how can you manage to mix those two worlds, a little bit your experience.
Well, from my experience and perception, and especially from my experience, the entrepreneurial or the startup world is something on its own that can't be really studied in university. You
Mhm.
can be given a tool set from university, but the environment out there is very dynamic. You can't properly study this in academia. But what you can learn in academia is basically a skill set like problem solving, structuring your day. And especially, I think the greatest thing that I learned during university is basically structuring myself and tackling huge academic problems. And this problem solving skill that is basically adapted every day by me in this very dynamic day, because you're always faced with these dynamic and changing behaviors. So maybe one advice, or I think academia can open very, very much doors. So for my in my case, it was so that I finished very, very good from university, that I hold a bachelor degree. And this gives me some sort of security by now, because I can always rely, I can always go back to academia. So I'm not a typical dropout, rather that I finished very good with my bachelor and then started exploring other options in my master. And I think this is always great to have a solid foundation that you can always rely on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I studied strategic entrepreneurship in Sweden, and the school was really good at studying this field, which for me was a little bit like at the beginning contradictory, right? Because you're studying something that you have to actually do and put in practice. But yeah, it's good to like understand the theory. But for example, we had a subject which was international marketing during the program, which was really connected to the job market and the needs of the world, because we were actually consulting a company that wanted to expand to the Spanish market. So we were doing the role of consultants, working with them. We went to the factory, we saw their facilities, how they operate, everything, and then we wrote a report. And I really enjoyed that one. And I think it should be a little bit more like that. It's important to have a little bit of theory, but I will prefer as an entrepreneur to have a little bit more of practice, right? And make things happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is always the problem with academia, that it lacks a bit of pragmatism. So in theory, everything looks cool. And I think we can further talk about the Spanish concept as well, because in theory and in the law, it looks super decent, it looks super cool. But when you start setting up these projects in practice, and you did this as well, you find you're suddenly facing like hidden problems that no one thought of and that can't be explored in theory or in academia. So you really need to step out of your comfort zone and start get going. And this is the greatest difference, I guess, between academia and the
Yeah,
problem about academia.
100%. Because when we started EcoDriveX, I mean, it seemed clear, right? Like you can have solar panels, you don't need to invest like initial investment, you can finance it, you can save money from the very first day. The installation is one day. Like everything are advantages. There are some barriers, of course, right? But we found more or less the way to circumvent those barriers and like eliminate all the friction and make this happen. But we struggled a lot to find customers. We had potential customers, but there are still like some things to mature in the market, like the awareness of the solutions, the bureaucratics behind it, the how to say availability or the that the distributors and the commercial electric companies like facilitate this process as well. All these kinds of things that you cannot really see in theory. Some of them, yes, if you do a proper market research and environment research about the industry. But then when you go to a building meeting, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's much more challenging than talk to investors and do an elevator pitch because they have many questions. And what if you screw the ceiling? What happens? And what if you don't put the right angle in the solar panel? So you really need to do your homework to go to those meetings, and that's something that you can study a lot, but you need to talk to that people to be able to know all potential cases, objections, and everything. So, say that I would like to know, and linking with what I just said, how is going your new venture, Sol Todo?
Right. So for the past two months, I've been living in Barcelona because I originally wanted to start like a social energy project in Barcelona as well. And I had the pleasure that I was founded by the German energy agency in order to conduct further research about this project and to see whether this concept could be adapted in Germany or not, and what really the greatest challenges of this concept. And when I moved to Barcelona, I was very motivated that I could suddenly set up some solar panels on my own. And outside of Barcelona, we really set up a project. But apart from this, we faced a lot of challenges as well. And during my research period, I really found out that there's a huge gap between what's in the law and what's being done in practice. Like you talked about these challenges, like the comercializadores, the electricity suppliers won't acknowledge these concepts, that they don't change the electricity tariff. So it takes up to 2 years in order for like a ready-made solar installation to be activated. And this is what's really challenging. And furthermore, in Barcelona is not the city where it should work. Introduce. I'm currently on another venture, which is called, and we're exploring the opportunity to start this concept in Mallorca, because Mallorca is a very, very dirty island in terms of electricity generation compared to Spain. So the CO2 footprint is 3 times as worse in comparison to Spain, and they have 78% of fossil generation. So I want to give it another shot and try to set up a small solar venture on Mallorca by now.
I don't know. You Germans, you always like to go to Mallorca. I don't know why.
Well, it's a pretty decent island, but what bothers me is really the CO2 footprint. So it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but they could really improve their electricity generation from my perception.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've seen like the map. You introduced me to one map that I would like to send to the audience, because I think I saw it once, but I didn't remember, and I saw that it's a really interesting tool. I'm gonna paste it here. It's like
You're
the
talking about the
yeah
electricity map, right?
yeah. So I
Maybe
will.
a small introduction to the audience. This is basically a live map of the total world. For Europe, it's more precise. It lacks some data for the US and Africa, I'm afraid. But this basically shows how dirty our electricity generation is for every hour. And if you compare these islands, Canary Islands, Mallorca with the Spanish land, it shows that they often heavily rely on fossil power plants and that they really, really lack solar energy. And you can see some brown spots in Europe. For instance, Poland relies on fossil fuels. And what's really, really interesting is that you can kind of see the availability of renewable energy in Germany, because during the night, the energy footprint gets very, very dirty because we rely on coal and gas power plants. But during the day, if the sun is shining, the CO2 footprint is drastically reduced as well. So it's a very, very fun map. I can totally recommend with playing a bit around with it.
Yeah, super interesting, because sometimes you can see these headlines in the newspaper saying like Spain is like 90% renewable energy working now, but it's like one afternoon, right? Because it was sunny and a lot of wind, and then people stick with this headline, but with this map you can see in real time what's actually happening, and you can see that Spain is in yellow, not in green, right? So
Exactly. It's only half the truth, just like you addressed it, right? Yeah.
So that's the main reason I wanted also to let the audience know, because yeah, we need to rely on real data, on real stuff, and because yeah, sometimes we don't get the real movie of what's happening.
Exactly. It's like if you only derive something from 1 hour from a day, this won't give you the right conclusions. I'm afraid. It's a super nice headline that Spain is totally renewable, but unfortunately, this is only half the truth, and you can kind of check this out with this map that Juan just provided.
Yes, and now I would like you to tell a little bit more about the concept of Soltoldo. How does it work?
Well, yeah, I'm very happy to share these thoughts. So, as we introduced in the beginning, kind of want to democratize solar energy, and that the vast majority of the society lives in flats, apartments, and does not really have an access to solar energy. And this is why we set up this sharing mechanism, which is basically about building huge solar installations, maybe on rooftops of industries or unused solar rooftops. And then we take this energy, instead of spilling it to the grid, or we're using the energy and kind of providing the people in apartments, in flats, with the solar energy produced. And how does it work in practice? So we use this sharing mechanism that has been introduced by Spain, and we kind of offer a rent concept. So assuming that Juan lives in an apartment, I owe a solar installation, and Juan and I come to agreement that you pay a monthly fee, a monthly subscription to use my solar energy. But with this subscription, you're allowed to use a certain share of the system, and the whole produced energy of this produced share belongs to you, and you can consume it. And if you're not able to consume it, it will be spilled into the grid, and you will get a compensation for this. And this is basically the concept. And one last remark: we want to do this as simple as possible, because we engineers typically craft a very, very technical solution, but then the people, we're going out and tell the people, come on, understand this concept, and this will be good for you. But I don't think that the transition to renewable energy works like this. We need to kind of change our approach, talk to a lot of people up front, and make this as simple, as convenient as possible, that basically my 7-year-old cousin understands this concept, and we take all these concerns and doubts seriously in order to get everybody on board and really have a joint transition to renewable energy.
Yes, you said a key word that I also liked, which is talk, talk, and talk. That's why we are talking now. That's something that we need in Spain, because in Spain we talk a lot about football and a lot about other stuff, which is also interesting and really nice. But I think we need to talk about if it is financially convenient to put solar panels, or environmentally convenient to put solar panels, or use alternative energies, or vote for putting solar panels, sit, talk to the neighbor about stuff like that, because I think not only the planet and the environment, but also the people is missing a financial opportunity, and that's something that the entrepreneurs we need to do. That was something that I was talking with the last guest, with Nessa. When you are launching a new product, you have to do two main things, right? Learn and educate. You have to say to the world that you are here for a reason, because of a reason, right? Because there is something that is better if you do it another way. And yeah, that's the main thing that you have to do in the beginning. So congratulations for that, for being brave enough to do this homework. And another thing that I like about the project is that you are using current roofs, because I mean, solar parks, for example, are a really powerful source of energy, and I think they are good to some extent. But why to do more solar parks if we are not using our infrastructure, right? Let's first use our infrastructure. So
Exactly, and this
damage the floor, the soil.
exactly, and this is basically all about. If you take a look at all our huge cities, for instance, Barcelona, or take Berlin or Hamburg, and you're just taking a look over the city, you see so much untapped potential, because we have these huge rooftops. Just take, for instance, a school, like take the rooftop of a gym, or yeah, like all these unused rooftops that are basically untapped potential for the energy transition, because then we can produce decentralized and local green energy, and even connect the majority of our society that live close by to these locations to renewable energy. And this is really the goal, I guess.
100%. I want to. I just remember that when I went to Valencia, because we targeted Valencia as our first city to start, because it's really sunny and I know the culture, the language, I have some network there. So also is a curiosity. It is like an average city in Spain is used for a lot of market studies. So it was nice to start there. And we started a marketing campaign when we got some funding. And me and my co-founder Maria, we flew to Spain, during some days, and we were doing the marketing campaign, talking to people, visiting rooftops, and we went to one of the highest rooftops in Valencia, and we were looking around how many solar panels, and we barely could see like a couple of small solar panels like this, and it was like, oh my god, is this real? I mean, why, right? I mean, it's quite clear that maybe there are interests that don't want to change, or I don't know, but it's like we need to do this, right? It's like there is a lot of potential and it's feasible. We just need to unite a little bit and to talk and expand this conversation so the people can join. So that was impressive, actually.
Mm.
And I used to do.
Yeah, I
Go ahead. Go ahead.
so yeah, exactly. I made exactly the same experience when I came the first time to Barcelona, and then the first day I walked to a mountain that is kind of outside of the city, and you can really see above the city. And I was kind of shocked and devastated when I firstly saw that there's, I said, this untapped potential, and on the other side there are maybe 100 solar panels, 100 solar panels installed in this whole city where basically 1 million people live. And I thought this can't be true, and there need to be something done about this. So
Yeah,
perfectly right on
you're
that.
talking about Barcelona, right? So
Exactly,
Barcelona, as far
exactly.
as I know, is like quite competitive when it comes to the solar industry. There are a lot of activity. So imagine in the rest of Spain.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And they're kind of wrote on their flag that they want to be the green capital of Europe. But
Hmm.
like when you're lacking solar energy, or when you're lacking energy, and energy is basically the greatest contributor to global warming, how do you want to become a climate or green city? So
Mhm.
this is exactly the question that arises from that.
Yeah, so we need to keep going with this, Niels. Solar industry needs to be pushed a little bit by brave entrepreneurs like you. And I wanted to ask you two questions, actually. The first one is, why did you agree to have this conversation with me?
This is a very good and fair question. I think it's basically all about not about sharing experience, because then people can learn from this experience. I love to hear podcasts from entrepreneurs as well, because on this journey, or on this very heavy journey, you're always challenged with the same problems as well. And so it's about sharing my thoughts, and maybe even inspiring people, or giving some small ideas to people that kind of heard your voices or your words, my words, and came up with a new concept. And this is why I agreed to talk to you. And furthermore, I just enjoy talking to like-minded people, and especially I enjoy, or in Spanish we say encantar, talking to you as well.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm doing these conversations as well, right? To share, to inspire, because I mean there is a lot of noise on the internet, and when I see something like this, I like it, and it has inspired me a lot of times, and a lot of my knowledge comes from the internet and also from the university, of course, right? But uh, I think it's a really good way to connect to people. It's a really good way to make initiatives like this happen. So I feel so grateful that you actually agreed to have this conversation with me. And before to ask you the last question, I want to know if you have any questions for me.
Well, um, this is a very good one, and I think we exchange a lot of knowledge as well. But I think I would like to know your personal opportunity. What's the greatest step when it comes to this entrepreneurial journey, or what's the greatest hurdle when jumping into the cold water? And why did you decide to start with your own venture as well?
Yeah, that's something that people ask me. Now that I'm looking for a job, sometimes the job seekers ask me, what drives you? Why are you doing eco drivings, or why are you doing this instead of doing something else? And I don't know. I think it's been natural for me. I started my first business when I was 17. It was a little gadget store, electronic gadget store, EcoDriveX 1.0. And yeah, I just see problems and then I see ways to solve them. And I say, okay, so let's do it. I mean, what can I do better than that, right? If I see something that could be improved and I have power to do so, I have a brain, I have hands, I have legs, I have a mouth to talk. I can do a lot of things to make this better, or at least to try it. And what if you don't try it? So you will never know what happens, right? So for me, most of the time, it's better to try. And then if you have to fail, so you learn, right? And yeah, I think that's the main reason. That's right.
I think this is yeah, I think this is a great question. That even though this jump into the cold water might be very frightening, is that I think both of us can say that it's worth the jump, and you're learning a lot, and you're developing yourself very strongly in this
Yeah,
with
because
this
cold
jump.
water usually don't kill you, right?
Yes, right.
So
Exactly. This
that's
is
the thing. En España decimos lo que no mata engorda, o lo que no te mata te hace más fuerte.
eso es.
So yeah,
Vale.
I think you yes, it's really similar to your experience, and that's at the end entrepreneurship, right? Jump to the cold water. So the last question, it's a little bit linked to the previous one, right? But it's also to wrap up a little bit. So it is, why do you do what you do?
Well, I think in one sentence, it's basically because I'm very privileged. So I was born in Germany. I experienced a very good education that I hadn't really properly paid for, and I did a good bachelor. And now we're like at the verge of losing something great, which is basically the fight against climate change. And we have 6 more years to do that something against this. And there are so many inspiring and motivated people around there that already took this step. And I said to myself, okay, if I won't take this step right now with my very privileged background, then I will be very disappointed in the future from myself. And this is basically, as we previously said, we don't have a lot of things to lose. And why we're not addressing this problem of climate change now, we will have a very severe time upcoming. And with every day waiting more, this will be harder to take a step
I'm
against this.
moved. I like what you say, Niels. Go, go, go for it. I'm no.
But
I seriously, I like what you are saying. I think it's the right thing to do. So I encourage you to keep going, and you know that here I am to discuss and talk about this amazing project. So for now, yeah,
so
go ahead.
we'll do so. And thank you very much for providing this platform that I can share my experience. That or we already received some feedback in the chat as well. And this is what it's all about: connecting similar-minded people, inspiring each other, helping out each other. And this is what I like about being in this environment as well. So huge thanks to you for providing this platform for this amazing project, and thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, just like
Likewise,
always.
likewise, Niels. And thank you also to Saed Hashemi that has provided some feedback. Thanks to all the audience that has been here in the different platforms. Again, Niels, so grateful for having you here. and let's keep this conversation going. Let's see what the butterfly effect gives to this conversation.
Thank you very much, and take
Bye
care,
bye.
guys.